Jimin was hurt by Jungkook's words. One sentence, 16 words. But enough to shatter the silence of the night in the 5th Division where military training was taking place, and more than that, to shatter the tranquility in the heart of Park Jimin. The faint words came out of Jungkook's mouth, not as a global BTS celebrity, but as a soldier fighting an invisible mental pressure. The sentence not only carved a deep wound in Jimin, but also shook the entire barracks and created a wave of emotion that swept into the hearts of armies around the world. What really happened? That night, there was no battle, no sounds of explosions. But an inner battle was raging between two figures the world had long known as BTS's golden duo. In an atmosphere full of tension as their military service neared its end, Jungkook voiced an unexpected doubt. And that sentence silenced laughter, halted conversation, and plunged an entire military barrack into deep silence. Even the soldiers who didn't know them personally could only bow their heads, holding back tears they couldn't explain. Jimin, known for his gentle nature, empathy, and team encouragement, said nothing that night. He just sat in a corner of the room, hugging his knees, staring at the floor that couldn't answer his questions. His tears flowed quietly, soundlessly. Not staged for the camera, not for a performance. The tears of a human being struck by uncertainty from someone closest to him. And the world wondered, why did those words hurt so much? Since the announcement that Jimin and Jungkook would be serving their military duty together in the same division, fans felt relieved. In the silence of BTS group activities, the presence of the two youngest members in the same place became a glimmer of light, a hope that they would support and strengthen each other. They appeared solid, even becoming symbols of strength among the other soldiers. But as life rarely runs in a straight line, tension began to surface in the final months of their service. June, the month of their scheduled discharge, was drawing near. But for these two friends, the approaching end felt increasingly frightening. Jungkook, long known as the Golden Magne, perfect at everything, suddenly showed his vulnerable side. He was afraid that when this was over, their relationship would no longer be the same. Amid the burden of being a global idol and the responsibility of being a model soldier, he said something he hadn't prepared for its impact. The words weren't meant to hurt, but were a release of fear long held in. But Jimin, who had always seen Jungkook as a pillar, instead felt abandoned. Those words weren't just a statement, but a kind of confession that maybe Jungkook no longer saw their future the same way as before. And that hit him hard. The soldier who witnessed the moment said, "We all felt it, as if two brothers were being forced apart by a war they didn't choose." The army's reaction was equally emotional. Virtual tears flooded social media. They didn't just cry for Jimin's wound, but also for Jungkook's candor. They cried for the reality that even their idols, who seemed so perfect, were profoundly human. Some military psychologists argue that emotional bonds formed under pressure, such as military training, can be very deep, but also extremely fragile. Jungkook might have thought that by opening a small window into his fear, he would feel relief. But it turned out that window became a deep chasm for his friend. And that night, silence stood as evidence of something far greater than just a sentence. It was proof that two young men who had conquered the world could still be defeated by the fear of losing each other. A few days after the incident, the atmosphere in the barracks hadn't fully recovered. Jimin tried to keep himself busy. He was more active than usual, taking on heavy tasks, helping other soldiers. But his eyes still held a wound that hadn't healed. Jungkook, on the other hand, was seen spending more time alone. His smile, once able to lighten the mood, now seemed a symbol of unspoken sorrow. Then, one seemingly ordinary morning, a small letter was found in Jimin's locker. No name, no signature. Just one simple sentence. "If you knew how much I wanted time to stop for a moment, you'd understand why I was afraid to speak that night." The letter needed no signature. Jimin knew who wrote it. And with that, he knew that the wound wasn't one-sided. They were both hurt, they were both afraid, and they were both still trying to understand what their relationship meant after all this that armies were once again moved by the news. The letter became a symbol of acknowledgement, apology, and hope. The world now witnessed not just two pop stars, but two ordinary young men caught in a profoundly human dilemma. In the end, the public can only wait. Wait to see whether time will heal or ultimately change them forever. But one thing is clear. The relationship between Jimin and Jungkook is no longer just about music or the stage. This is about a friendship being tested by the realities of life. And in the midst of a harsh world, their honesty that night was the truest form of courage. Armies cried not because this was the end, but because they saw that even heroes can feel broken. And in that lies their true strength, in tears, in silence, and in love that can't always be expressed in words. Continuing BTS's emotional tragedy, reflection, skepticism, and the challenge to the reality of information when that emotional night quickly spread across digital platforms, from video clips on TikTok, transcripts on Twitter, to speculative recordings on YouTube. A more fundamental question began to arise. Is all this real? Did such a touching conversation truly happen between Jungkook and Jimin in the military barracks? Or is this simply a finely crafted narrative designed to capture the attention of a global public hungry for drama, emotion, and idle conflict? News of the emotional interaction between Jimin and Jungkook, shrouded in sadness and fear, indeed drew extraordinary sympathy from fans and the general public. But behind the flood of empathy and tears that poured into digital spaces, we need to pause and ask, are we witnessing reality? Or are we being drawn into a story shaped from a particular perspective for the sake of virality? Let's reflect. The information circulating about this event comes from various social media platforms known as fertile ground for perceptions that are not necessarily accurate. There is no official statement from the South Korean military, no clarification from Big Hit Music or HYB labels, not even visual or written documentation that could serve as strong proof of the conversation. So why did so many people immediately believe it? Have we, as the public, become too easily influenced by emotional narratives? Has our sympathy been conditioned to respond in a particular way toward idols we've long considered perfect figures? If so, do we truly love them as whole humans or only love the narrative crafted around them? This phenomenon should prompt us to be much more critical. The existence of information from unverifiable sources is a clear warning sign. In a world where the speed of information spread often outweighs its truth, we must ask, am I a consumer of truth or just a target of a particular agenda? Questions we all should reflect on. Who truly benefits from the spread of this news? Why did this news emerge near the end of their military service? Is there a similar pattern of emotional narrative spread in the past? Who was the first source to share this story? And what was their motive? It's not impossible that this narrative, although it seems sincere and touching, is actually part of a communication strategy to maintain relevance and emotional engagement with BTS. We're not accusing, but it's important to remain open to all possibilities. It could even be part of a larger script, a creative effort to maintain ARMY's loyalty during a period of group inactivity. However, what if the event truly happened? Would we then be trapped in excessive cynicism that ultimately erodes our empathy for these idols' psychological conditions? In advocating for skepticism, it's also important not to lose our sense of humanity. There's a thin line between being critical and being apathetic. Therefore, we invite you, the readers, to actively participate in this discussion. Do you think this story is a sincere portrayal of two people under extreme emotional pressure, or is it just a skillfully constructed narrative meant to reach global trending topics? Please reflect. How did you react to this news when you first heard it? Did you immediately believe it because you felt close to the subjects? Have you ever verified the source before sharing it again? Would you feel deceived if it turned out this was just a fictional story? This reflective attitude is crucial, not only to preserve the integrity of information, but also to protect our mental well-being as digital citizens. The emotions we invest in stories like these are immense. And if they are built on invalid foundations, the impact can be widespread. Disappointment, loss of trust, even mass apathy toward real issues in the future. So, we reaffirm that the information in this article originates from various social media platforms that have not yet been officially confirmed. We do not have direct access to primary sources, and so far, there has been no official clarification from the parties involved. This reflects how social media works, shaping public perception faster than the verification process that should be standard in responsible journalism. We urge you all not only to be consumers of information, but also producers of awareness. In an era where information can be easily manipulated, being skeptical is not a form of cynicism, but a form of love for the truth.